I loaded up. You decided to come in looking like Happy the Clown today, apparently, with that blazer.
Just because you couldn't pull it off doesn't mean it isn't perfection.
I couldn't physically fit it on due to its small size.
I'm bigger than you in every way. Absolutely.
Now it's just delirious, like delusion. I showed you the picture.
No definition.
I showed you the picture of the jeans I ripped through on the inner thigh because of my hugeness.
It's not even a word.
We're rocking and rolling. Fantastic. Welcome back, Jay. To this sunny yet cold day. Fall hit us really fast.
Got cold real quick, but it is sunny. These are my perfect days. Crispy, chilly, and bright. Just like me.
Okay.
Crispy, chilly, and bright.
Crispy, chilly, cold.
You're in my personal space. Can you please move over? Thank you.
No, I agree with you. I love this type of time of year. So everything starts looking really nice in terms of like the leaves and everything, and then we start going into Christmas as well.
Isn't this what you people come for?
Well, what do you mean by you people?
You were not,
Whoa.
you didn't exit your mother in this country. That's what I mean.
Wow.
Like cold, it's kind of Canadian, but it's like the color difference, the tree leaves are
Considering
changing.
this is dubbed the Great White North, I think your people are more inclined to be used to, the heating's finally working, like half an hour too late.
I welcome it. Anyway.
I think you're more geared towards like igloo-ism than we are.
We're used to it. We take it for granted now.
This is why I like this weather. It's nice, and we start going into Christmas as well, which starts on Saturday in my house.
Which is insulting to the entire Christmas spirit because it's boldly too early. Have you dealt with that gnome yet?
No, the gnome will be there. Everyone will see the gnome around Christmas time. I may not be there because the gnome may have finally been done with me, but it is the gnome of death. My wife is going to kill me.
That's what it is. Okay.
Market update today, Jay.
Market update.
Yeah.
Things are interesting as usual, and we're going to dive into some reasons why.
Well, actually, they're not. They're not really interesting. I
think they're.
A lot of it is much of a muchness. Love that saying, don't you? But I'll read off some figures for you. I want to go off onto a bit of a side tangent that is still relevant to these figures at the moment and what we're seeing. But for now, let's bust out some figures, shall we?
Bust out?
Yeah.
Welcome to 1995.
Residential home sales in the region totaled 1,903 in October 2022, a 45.5% decrease from the 3,494 sales recorded in October 2021. A 12.8% increase from the 1,687 homes sold in September 2022.
So that increase is interesting. That decrease year over year is irrelevant and obvious.
Yep.
So
crazy differences in year
busiest year of all time to the fastest interest rate increase of all time.
Your favorite statistic, last month's sales were 33.3% below the 10-year October average.
Another stat that is, we've recently been told is relevant, if you recall, but still irrelevant.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah.
No one makes decisions based on that.
It's a very high-level view of the market, but doesn't...
Too high to matter.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Never mind. Keep going.
Good analogy for you. We're looking for the Empire State Building, but you can't see it from space. You can just see the general area.
What? No, makes no sense. Keep going.
Fantastic analogy. Once again,
makes absolutely no sense.
In terms of sales to active listings ratios, we're at a combined 19.3%.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Still just a hair
on the seller's market.
Under the seller's market. A high balanced, as we like to say.
For reference, that figure was
12 and 20.
That figure was hitting the mid 40% start of this year, but yeah, please do elaborate the sales to active listings ratio, what it means and the boundaries.
Under 12% buyer's market, 12 to 20 balanced market, which we are in the high end of right now, and then over 20% is ye old seller's market, which was in the 40s last year.
I will say though, so houses, as in detached houses, are at 14.3%. They obviously went up the most, so they had the biggest drop to come down. Townhouses are at 21.6% sales to active listings ratio, and apartments are 23.2%. I will caveat, these are delayed numbers, and the problem with most of the numbers, pretty much all of the numbers we get from the board and various other graphs and charts, they're delayed because obviously we're now going into mid-November. These numbers are the accumulation of the October market, so they're delayed.
They're delayed by 1 week.
No, I would say they're not real-time live market like situations. So I wouldn't say they're delayed by 1 week.
Well, 1 week because we're 1 week into November.
I understand that, although the actual date is 1 week away, it's still not the same market.
Well, no, because we are a
So
week
the releasing
into.
of the figures is delayed by a week, yes, but it's not the same market by just a week. It's not how it works.
Okay, those are the October numbers.
Those are the October
and we're
numbers.
speaking about them a week into November, so that's how it works. And surprisingly, there's no 14% is the closest to a buyer's market, but not even really that close. So how many times did we actually touch into a buyer's market in the last 8 months?
Oh God, I don't think we've actually ever.
There may have been one segment
we haven't
once.
even gently dabbled, one will say.
I think there was one segment once, but housing once 2 or 3 months ago or something, but very, very, very little.
I mean, but townhouses now are just over that seller's market territory. At their worst, townhouses were like 75% sales to active listings ratio. Crazy. But now the
Transitional
attached homes,
products.
so the apartment and townhouse homes are just above the seller's market range. I think it's important to note that we're now starting to really see those days on market build for townhouses and the condos. So we'll see those numbers come down even further. So I don't expect them to be in seller's market territory for a while.
You know, funny when we talk about this, townhouse is a very popular transitional product, we'll say. So usually people buy a condo and then they transition to a townhouse to get relatively independent, nice little walk up. You got some lifestyle without an elevator now, it's great. And then maybe a little yard, and then you jump up to a house. Typical transition. Mm-hmm. But that townhouse, I find from my experience, you may see it differently, I'd welcome your 2 cents on this, is only a buying up transition. I see no one, and I can't think of one now that I think of it, downsizing from house to townhouse. I always see house to condo, and I think it's because traditionally when people are downsizing, they're in their travel years, and there's obviously an element of security with condos. So my belief is that's what that is, and usually they're one level, and when older and the old knees start to go,
Yours are careful.
It's
scenario like last week.
It's easier to be on one level, of course, but I just thought of that. A very uptrend transitional product, but very, very, very popular.
I'm a little biased. I don't like townhouses, to be honest. I would rather take my 1,200 square foot split over 2 floors and just have 1,200 square foot on 1 floor, personally. That's just me, but hey, it is what it is. I think it's a little bit different if you've got a larger size townhouse, like we're talking like 2,000 square foot or 2,500 square foot, the size of a house split over that. But most of the townhouses, particularly downtown, are not that size. They're just maybe the size of a condo, slightly larger, split over 2 floors.
The one we lived in was 1,200 square feet, split over 3 floors.
Yeah.
400 a floor.
Yeah. No.
And tell your wife.
Can't even lie down.
Tell your wife that we had our first child on the top level in 400 square feet, and we stayed there for the first 6 months. Tell your wife. That's a reality check for the world, okay? Starting with your wife. Sorry, continue.
Anyway, home price index, another delayed number as well, not just by a week. 1,148,900. the combined amount. So the home price index, I'm going to say it just because it's a figure, but again, I don't see it holding too much relevance to you and your particular search as well. That number varies wildly in between particular areas. Like you could have a home in Yaletown and another home in Yaletown, and it could be completely different, let alone when you're looking at a home price index. Plus, it is also delayed as well. That number is based upon previous months sold, and well, that's just not the market you're fighting in at the moment.
No, it's. I think they use it as a generic market gauge, but I don't think it's relevant to any individual buyer whatsoever. I agree.
So now I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent, and this is going to come across, we're going to trade roles today, or maybe I'm just going to take your role and you're going to remain the same. I'm going to be a bit more pessimistic.
Realistic.
And
I don't know why you use that word.
In this case, it is realistic. At the moment, sellers, I'm sorry, but you need to sort your lives out.
Come on! Come on! Come on! Come on!
Just to put it mildly.
I am going to disagree with you on this. Keep going.
I think right now sellers are delusional. A lot of sellers are delusional. I'm interested to hear your take on this before we go into things, though.
It's just rude.
You are a rude, terrible person.
When talking to the people that hold all the power like that is just rude. Keep going.
Okay. So usually market prices are going up, and obviously it's in the seller's favor, and buyers can't afford to get in or whatnot. Then when we have it, that's obviously the seller's market. Then when things go in the other way, prices are coming down. This is more inviting for buyers to come in, and it typically makes it a buyer's market. We're at an interesting impasse right now because prices are actually coming down, but interest rates are going up, which, as we discussed last week, is actually making these cheaper price homes more expensive than when they were in the peak. So we're in this bit of market in this interesting market where nothing's really working for either side. And eventually, one of them has to give. And in my opinion, it's going to be sellers.
Okay, continue. I disagree.
Okay, well,
In theory,
okay.
what you're saying makes sense.
Well, okay, so there's a couple things here. First of all, it's not going to be buyers because a buyer can't give on what they can afford. They can't just say, okay, we'll pay $1.5 million for this home. The thing that they're being held back on right now is interest rates and how much they can actually lend. In a typical buyer's market, they could give and say, okay, we'll give, we think this price is coming down, but we'll just get it now, and it's done, we make the purchase and move on. But you can't do that when you're talking about maximum qualifying amounts. Plus, obviously, there's going to be the further interest rate. Sellers, however, can and will. But continue.
You're thinking too small again, my young friend. What's the highest sale price to take place in Vancouver, period?
Highest ever?
Ever.
54 million?
No. I think it was like 36.
Yeah.
36 or 42. Doesn't matter. To every house, home, condo, townhouse, there are the people that can afford it. And let's just say that the ladder by 100,000 doesn't move. Sellers just are static. The buyers move down. So your $2 million buyer, now based on interest rates, is now a $1.75 million buyer, and so on.
Yeah.
So you're saying in an uptrending market where I can reach, because the money's cheap enough and I can service it, reach the seller's price. It's now, we'll call it a static or downtrending market where there's still people that can afford all levels. They just aren't reaching up. They're now coming down.
Okay, but you're talking about a regular market.
I'm talking about today's market.
So usually I would agree with you. However, what's happening right now is those $1 million buyers with interest rates, they don't even qualify for that $1 million anymore.
Yes.
They qualify for
750.
750, maybe 700.
Yeah.
It's more expensive to buy that 700, 750 home now
Yeah.
than it was when that home was $1 million.
It's about par, but yeah.
So you went through the numbers last week.
At those ranges, it's par. As you jump up, it gets more. But yes.
So that's what we're seeing in today's market. So the market prices are coming down because we've seen days on market build up on homes. So buyers have already shown we're not willing to just throw money at it because we want it. Now, what I'm getting at in specifics here is on the supply side of things. Because it's very low supply, really buyers, sellers, you're in a bit of a good position, one can say, from the side point of you don't have a lot of competition. You've got your property on the market, you don't have a lot of competition. So in theory, you're in a good place because there's going to be multiple buyers out there who want your property. But these homes are still not selling, they're just sat there. And in order for them to sell, it's not going to be a case of, oh, we just haven't found the right buyer yet, or, you know, we don't mind staying on the market for longer and we'll sell at our price. They will have to adjust because
you're going into this conversation with the mindset that everyone that lists has to sell. And that is absolutely not a fact.
I'm not going in, no, not at all. I'm not going into the mindset that everyone has to sell. But what will happen is those people who do want to stick to their guns and stick to their prices, they will see their fellow community, their fellow sellers around them for similar types of properties who do have to sell, who do want to get out, and they will see them sell at lower prices. And those lower prices will reaffirm market value coming down. And then you're just getting into the age-old game of chasing the market down, in which, again, sellers, you need to adjust what your expectations are.
If
right now,
they have to sell.
You're asking for too much.
If they have to sell.
Okay, but if you're going, it's not a case of if you have to sell, it's actually if you're going to sell.
No.
Because
it's if you have to sell and you have to put your market on today and the comp sells for $250,000 less and you have to sell, then you have to follow that trend.
No, because the case at the moment is you're not going to sell. If that is the new comparable, and you decide, I don't have to sell, I'm going to sit here for $250,000 more, somebody's just not going to pay $250,000 more.
Then it doesn't matter because the seller doesn't have to sell.
But it still matters if they're actually planning to sell. Why don't I just put a one-bedroom condo on for $5 million and just say, I don't have to sell, it doesn't matter?
A lot of people do that. There's only going to be a percentage of the people that have to sell that actually follow these, and that's what we're seeing. If there's an 8 to 12%, maybe 15% variance from peak to now in the bulk of the market, obviously different pockets are affected differently based on comps that actually sell. There's going to be people that enter the market and play with that and use those numbers, and there's going to be people that we see every day list at peak pricing, and because there's not a lot of competition, if you want it, they will pay, is the seller's opinion. That could sit on there for 300 days and then they pull it off. But they don't have to become a statistical number. And there's a lot of people now who have rates locked in that weren't variable, that have like 1s, 2% for the next 5 years. So unless there's like, I'm moving and my job or my kid or something, they don't have to sell.
Okay, and I'm not saying that they have to sell, but what I'm getting at is if you actually want a genuine chance of selling, which is why most people will put their property on the market because they want a genuine chance of selling, you have to adjust your price expectations down.
I agree with you there, but I think that's...
The market at the moment doesn't care if you don't have to sell. If you sit there and you're like, this is my price, I don't have to sell, buyers are not going to say, okay, well, they don't have to sell, so yes, we will offer more. They're just going to be like, okay, here's the bird. See you later.
No, because you're still talking about buyers trying to reach up. I will have to offer more. I think the majority of the market now of stuff that is on are unrealistically priced. I agree with you. I think the majority of those people are testing the market and don't have to sell. And I think that you're just going to have that guy that was going to spend $2.5 million and now has to spend 1.75 because the money's more expensive and the prices haven't adjusted that much. He's going to edge down to get in because he has to buy, and he's just buying something lesser than he did before because it's more expensive.
Okay, so that $2.5 million or that $2.25 million home, it's gone through a price adjustment and come down. It's now worth 1.75 million.
Yeah.
Buyer, obviously subject to inflation, etc., that home is now more expensive, as we've discussed.
That is
than
correct,
when
yeah.
it was 2.25.
Yeah.
So the buyer is not going to buy that home. They're going to buy a different home. Because
It depends which buyer, if they can afford it.
Because if you could afford it at 2.25 million when it was cheaper to buy, and you couldn't buy, and you didn't buy it then, you're not going to buy it at 1.75 million when it's more expensive now.
Maybe not the
therefore-
2.25 buyer, but the 2.5 buyer can afford it still.
Okay, so then we're now shifting, and the higher the price value, as you know, the less amount of pool that there is out there.
Yeah.
So you're opening yourself up to a much smaller market, and in which prices need to adjust. And so that 2.25 seller, who's now down to 1.75, can't expect to still be after the same pool of buyers that they were after when the market was hot. So they're going to have to reduce further.
He can't expect to sell, but it's not that. Does he have to sell? That's why the market's down 46%.
Yes, exactly. And so in order to actually make things move, because if you don't need to sell, this is kind of a moot point, because put your place on for 5 million.
I know it's a moot point, but the thing is, what fraction of the market of listings out there are at moot point and don't have to sell? I believe the majority, and that's the problem.
Okay, then it determines on what means you have to sell. Like, do I have to sell, otherwise I'm going to go bankrupt and I'm going to lose everything?
Yes, that's what it means.
Okay, no, I don't.
Am I going to lose a job opportunity? So I'm selling no matter
I
what.
disagree with you.
Okay, well, that's what I think is happening in the
disagree with you
market.
in that regard. So, and the reason why I think it's also going to be biased is because interest rates are not going to adjust until the end of next year, probably at the earliest. So that's a lot.
You mean
of
go
time.
down?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I agree with that.
that's a lot of time to either A, just sit and build days on market, or B, wait for the better market. And what happens in that time when numbers are still low, interest rates are probably going to be higher because of the December.
If you're locked in and you can afford to hold, and they don't have to sell,
okay,
then we have.
Okay, you lock in and you hold, that's fine. But what's going to happen in terms of buyers out there who are actually buying property?
They're the ones with the problem.
They're
Yes.
they're going to have to wait and wait and wait.
Yeah.
And that's fine, they can't adjust. But all the time that they're waiting and numbers are extremely slow, that's going to impact sellers. And the market is, I think people this time next year are going to be down in terms of value of where they are today.
I don't disagree with that either.
Then there you go.
But-
Market value is going to reduce. So sellers, if you want a realistic chance of actually selling, you are going to have to adjust your expectations down. Because I'm sorry to say it, and people hate hearing this, but you missed the market.
Missed it by that much.
You need to
Well,
deal
the
with
peak is gone, of
You need
course.
to deal with the fact that you missed the market, and by adjusting, if you adjust now versus you adjust in a year, you're going to be adjusting more in a year than you are now. Take the jump now when it's not even a jump, it's a hop, rather than taking the plunge this time next year in order to get things sold and done. That's my point. You know nothing, Jon Snow. Game of Thrones. That was a millennial show.
I watched it. I see your point, but I believe that obviously those things have to take place for sales to take place. I just believe that the bulk of the market do not need to sell and would, now that they've seen a peak, and if they could still get close to it, and I do believe that's wishful thinking, but I just don't believe the bulk will sell. And again, if you've got a 1 point something or a 2 point something, even a 3 point something rate for another 3, 4, 2.5 years, I think those reasons are why we've still got a lot of hesitancy in bringing realistic inventory, realistically priced inventory to market.
Well, it's about 20% on average a year mortgages need to renew.
Well, okay, yeah, because people typically take 5-year terms if you're talking about fixed.
So yeah, those are the numbers. Even if all of those mortgages needed to renew at one point, like right now, and they all renewed and they all purchased, that doesn't even push us up to a balanced territory where things can kind of stay as they are, possibly put more pressure on buyers and for sellers to stick to their higher prices. So your point is kind of a moot point, because at any point in the market, you can just say, well, it depends on who needs to sell. People still sell their homes even though they don't need to sell. So if you want a realistic expectation of selling your home, you will need to adjust your price downwards. If it's not on the market and it's not selling. Don't get me wrong, if you're going by the comparables and what they say now of sold comparables, fair enough, you're going by the recent numbers. But if you're like, this sold in April or March earlier this year for 1.1, so therefore I should be getting, in my own world that I've made up this number, like 1.05, 1 million. Like, well, if you're on and it's not selling, you have to adjust your price downwards. And until that happens, it's not going to move.
Someone who has to sell will have to play by those rules, yes.
So
I still think that's a minority segment of the market.
I don't think it's a minority. So we're going to have to disagree on that one. But that's the deal. I think sellers, you need to adjust because buyers are.
We're not at peak pricing anymore, obviously. As we've said a million times, it's a $2 million house at 1.5% interest rate, still worth $2 million at 6% interest rate. No.
No, I think the difference is people think on the selling side, in the peak, mine was worth 2.5 million.
Because money was so cheap.
Okay, yes, for whatever reason, blah, blah, blah. But you've missed the market now enough that the price change in your property is significant. If you were worth 2.5 million, don't be surprised if you're worth 2.2, 2.1 today. You've missed the market, so you can't just get away with, well, you know, I'm probably going to be worth 50 grand less than what it was in the peak. No, like it's changed. It's changed massively. So for those people, I mean, if you can just sit there and waste time, basically build days on market and get nowhere fast.
If you need to sell, yes, this is sound advice.
I hate you so much.
You hate me, don't you? No, I don't hate you.
It's the reality.
I hate you so much.
It's the reality.
Nonetheless, I think that pretty much wraps it up.
We're still at same levels, just obviously, as it shows, we're not in a buyer's market in any segment, but there's very little turnover still, and not a lot of people that need to sell that would need to follow your advice if they needed to sell. Will that change in the near future? Day by day, we get closer to everyone's term expiring, yes.
If you don't need to sell, remove your property from the market and relist at 5 million. Just all of you, 1-bedroom condos, don't need to sell because you don't need to sell, so it doesn't matter. Relist at 5 million. If you don't relist at 5 million, you have a 100% chance of not getting 5 million. If you relist at 5 million, as the law of averages states, you technically have a percentage chance of getting 5 million.
If you've got something unique enough, it's worth 5 million.
And I'm sorry, your 1-bedroom, 630 square foot looking into the building next door is not unique enough.
I think you're the only person that would tell a 1-bedroom looking into the building next door that they should list at 5 million.
That's... Anyway, I hate you. Let's cut this off.